It was just supposed to be a simple request. I needed time off, just a few days, to handle a family emergency. I never imagined that asking for leave would end up causing a massive storm at work. I'd always been the kind of person to put in the extra hours, make sure deadlines were met, and help out whenever I could. So, when my family needed me, I thought it would be no big deal to ask for a couple of days to take care of things. But the moment I sent that email, something inside me knew it wasn't going to be as simple as I thought. I thought my manager would understand. After all, family comes first, right? But when he called me into his office, I had no idea what I was about to hear. "We're understaffed right now," he said, completely dismissing my situation. "You need to make arrangements. I can't let you leave." My heart dropped. How could he say that? How could he be so cold when I was in the middle of something so important? I'd been loyal. I'd given everything to this company. And yet, when it came time for me to ask for a little understanding, he hit me with this. What did this mean for me? Was my commitment all just meaningless? The longer we talked, the more my frustration built up. But I couldn't just back down. Not this time. He had no idea what he was starting. But what would I do next? That was the question hanging in the air, and that's when I realized I couldn't just let this slide. I remember the exact moment the whole situation flipped. I sat in that small conference room waiting for my manager, trying to control the rising anxiety in my chest. I knew what was coming, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't going to be just another mundane conversation. I had explained everything over email. The emergency was urgent, and the timing couldn't have been worse, but family had to come first. The problem was, my manager wasn't exactly known for being the empathetic type. He was always about business first, always focused on the bottom line, no matter what it cost. When he finally walked in, it was as if the air in the room thickened. He didn't greet me with a "Hey, how are you?" like he usually would. Instead, he sat down, opened his laptop, and got straight to the point. "So, about your leave request," he started, almost like he was reading a script. "I can't approve it. We're in a crunch right now, and you're one of the only ones who can handle the workload." My heart sank. "I understand it's a tough time for the team," I said, my voice steady despite the growing frustration. "But this is a family emergency. I can't just ignore it. I need to be there." He didn't look up from his screen, barely acknowledging my words. "We've got deadlines to meet, and we can't afford to lose you for a few days." My blood began to boil. How could he be so cold? The words felt like a punch in the gut, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did he even hear me? Did he understand the gravity of what I was going through? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. This wasn't just a vacation request or a little time off. This was something far more important. But he wasn't listening. Not really. His mind was already made up. "You need to figure out another way to manage," he said flatly, closing his laptop with a definitive snap. "You'll just have to push through." That was it. No compassion, no empathy, just cold, hard rejection. My hands were shaking as I sat there, trying to process what had just happened. Was he seriously prioritizing work over something as essential as family? And the worst part was, he didn't even seem to care. I looked at him, trying to keep my composure, but inside, I was seething. "I've always been loyal to this company," I said, trying to keep the anger out of my voice. "I've never asked for anything like this before, and this is how you treat me?" He barely even glanced at me as he stood up. "I can't help it. You've got to figure it out. If you need to leave, then maybe you should consider your priorities here." His words were the final straw. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The way he treated me, the way he treated the entire situation, was a slap in the face. I had always put the company first, sacrificed my time, worked late nights, and now I was being told that my personal life didn't matter, that my family didn't matter. What was the point of all that loyalty if it meant nothing in the end? I could feel my pulse racing as I stood up. "You know what?" I said, taking a deep breath to steady myself. "I don't think I can work under these conditions anymore. I've been here long enough to know when I'm being treated like I don't matter." The words were out of my mouth before I even realized it, but once I said them, there was no turning back. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. "Are you threatening to quit?" he asked, his voice surprisingly calm considering the tension in the room. "Maybe," I replied, my voice firmer now, more confident. The silence that followed was deafening. He stood there, staring at me for what felt like an eternity. But I wasn't going to back down. My family needed me, and I couldn't be here, stuck under his thumb any longer. I'll get back to you on that, I said, turning on my heel and walking out. But as I left his office, a thought lingered in my mind. Was I really going to quit over this? Was my loyalty to the company so easily replaceable? At that moment, the decision felt like a punch to the gut, but it was a punch I had to take. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The moment I walked out of that office, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The weight of the decision hit me all at once, but there was a sense of freedom in it too. But let me tell you, I had no idea what I was really about to get myself into. You see, I thought I could walk away from that meeting, go home, take care of my family, and maybe have a moment to breathe. But the reality was far more complicated. My mind kept racing, thinking about what my manager had said, how he brushed aside everything that was important to me with a simple, push-through statement. And there was that lingering feeling in my gut, gnawing at me. How could I just let him get away with it? How could I let this injustice slide? I needed to make a decision, and fast. I had already put so much on the line, but it wasn't just about the time off anymore. It was about respect, about standing up for myself when it seemed like nobody else would. I spent the next few hours pacing around my house, wondering if I was making the right move. Quitting a job wasn't exactly a light decision, but what was the point of staying somewhere where I wasn't valued? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I couldn't work for someone who treated me like I was disposable. I couldn't stand by and let him steamroll over my personal life, my needs, my family. That thought made something inside me snap. This wasn't just about one leave request. It was about the bigger picture. This was about power dynamics, control, and how companies too often take their employees for granted. I was done playing that game, but still, there was that little voice in my head asking if I was overreacting. Maybe I was blowing things out of proportion. Maybe I should have just accepted the rejection and moved on. But every time I thought about it, I couldn't shake the feeling that my manager hadn't just rejected my request. He had rejected my humanity. And that was something I couldn't ignore. I'd been with the company for years, pouring my time and energy into my work, but all of that seemed to mean nothing when I needed a little understanding in return. The more I sat with it, the more I realized I couldn't let it go. This wasn't about the leave anymore. It was about dignity. And as that thought settled into my mind, the decision became clear. I wasn't just going to quit. I wasn't going to walk away quietly, letting him get the last word. No, I was going to make him realize that I wasn't someone he could push around. But how would I do that? How could I make him see that he'd crossed a line? I needed backup, and that's when it hit me. I wasn't the only one who had been treated like this. There were others in the office, others who had been passed over for promotions, ignored when they asked for time off, or simply belittled in meetings. I knew exactly who I needed to talk to. These were the people who had been silently suffering, afraid to speak up, afraid of rocking the boat. But now, I had a chance to change things. The more I thought about it, the more determined I became. I wasn't just going to quit and leave. I was going to take action. I was going to take control of my future, and maybe even the future of others. So, I did what I knew I had to do. I reached out to some of the best people on my team, people who had the same frustrations, the same feelings of being overlooked, undervalued, and ignored. They were the ones who had stuck around because they felt trapped, just like I had. But what if they didn't have to feel that way anymore? What if we all made a change? What if together, we could send a message that would make the company rethink how they treated their employees? But getting everyone on board wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't just about me anymore. I had to convince them that this was worth it, that we could make a stand. But how do you convince someone to risk everything when they've been living in fear for so long? I wasn't sure, but I knew I had to try. The conversation started slow. At first, I could see the hesitation in their eyes. They didn't want to risk their jobs. They didn't want to be labeled as troublemakers. But as I spoke, something shifted. The more I told them about my experience, the more they started to open up. They shared their own stories of being treated unfairly, of requests being ignored, of promises being broken. And with each story, I saw that spark of rebellion in their eyes. They didn't have to keep suffering in silence anymore. Together, we could stand up for what we deserved. And that's when I knew it was time. It was time to act. But as we made our plans, there was a nagging thought in the back of my mind. What if this blew up in our faces? What if we lost our jobs? What if we failed? I couldn't let those fears hold me back, though. Not anymore. The truth was, I couldn't afford to let this moment slip away. This was the tipping point, the moment that would either make or break everything. I had no idea what would happen next, but I was ready to find out. And deep down, I knew that whatever happened, I wasn't walking away from this battle alone. There were others with me now. We were in this together, and we were about to make some noise. The office would never be the same after this. The moment I made up my mind to quit, something inside me shifted. There was no going back anymore. And as much as I'd felt a sense of relief when I first made the decision, a new kind of weight settled on my shoulders. I was no longer just upset with my manager or even just about the rejection itself. No, I was about to make a bold move, one that would change everything. I had crossed a line in my mind. I was no longer going to be the employee who quietly took what was given to her. I wasn't going to accept the broken promises, the unfair treatment, or the blatant disrespect. And that moment, that sudden realization, was both empowering and terrifying. Because once I made the choice to walk away, everything would change. I was going to burn bridges. As I sat at home, drafting up my resignation letter, the enormity of it all really hit me. This wasn't just a resignation letter. This was my declaration of independence. This was my refusal to let anyone take me for granted. My hand trembled slightly as I typed out the words, "To whom it may concern." That was it. There was no going back. I couldn't sit in that office under that oppressive environment anymore. What had started as a simple request for time off had now turned into an act of defiance. I couldn't help but feel a little pride swell inside me. But then the reality of what was coming next started to sink in. There were consequences to this bold move. The job market wasn't kind, and I didn't have another offer lined up. I had a family to support, bills to pay, and yet here I was, putting it all on the line. What if this backfired? What if I couldn't find something else fast enough? What if I ended up regretting this? I could feel the weight of those questions hanging over me. But still, there was no turning back. I couldn't stay in that job anymore, knowing what I now knew. I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting for the others who had been pushed to the edge, who were too scared to make the first move. This wasn't just my battle anymore. I reached out to a few people I trusted at work, the ones who had always been there, and explained what I was about to do. There were no promises, no guarantees that they would join me in this act of rebellion, but they listened. They heard the frustration in my voice, and some even agreed with me. One by one, the team started to rally around me. It wasn't just a few disgruntled employees anymore. It was a movement, a quiet, unspoken rebellion against a culture that undervalued its workers. But even with that support, there was still fear. What if it wasn't enough? What if the others stayed silent? And then what? But I wasn't going to wait forever. The time was now. I had already been pushed past my breaking point, and I could feel a shift within me. I wasn't just quitting a job. I was making a stand. The next morning, I printed my resignation letter. My heart pounded as I held it in my hands, knowing that once I handed it over, everything would change. No more meetings, no more emails, no more pretending like everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. This was it. I took a deep breath and headed into the office, letter in hand, ready to face whatever was coming next. When I walked into the manager's office, the look on his face was one of sheer surprise. He probably didn't expect me to actually follow through, to take the drastic step of quitting. But there I was, standing before him, knowing that he had no idea what he was about to lose. As I handed him the letter, he looked at it, then back at me, then back at the letter, a confused expression crossing his face. He was speechless. It didn't even seem like he could comprehend what was happening. I couldn't help but feel a bit of satisfaction at that moment. "What's this?" he finally asked, though it was clear he already knew. "My resignation," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm swirling inside me. He blinked, clearly thrown off, and asked the obvious question, "Why?" And just like that, I felt it. An overwhelming surge of confidence. I wasn't going to back down now. I wasn't going to let him talk his way out of this. Because I asked for time off to take care of my family. And you rejected it without even understanding why it was important. That's not the kind of company I want to work for, I said. His face hardened. You're making a mistake, he said, his voice cold. You don't know what you're throwing away. I know exactly what I'm throwing away, I said, standing tall. I'm throwing away the idea that I should be okay with being treated like this, and I'm not the only one. That last sentence hit him harder than anything else. His eyes flickered for a moment, and I could see the change in his expression. Maybe he hadn't expected this. Maybe he thought I was just another employee who would quietly leave without a word. But now, with the support of my team, he could see it. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about everyone else he had taken for granted. He'd forgotten one thing. We weren't just employees. We were human beings with lives. And when he crossed that line, he couldn't just erase it. He stared at me for what felt like forever. His words were quieter now. You're making a huge mistake. But I was past the point of second-guessing myself. I'd already made the choice. I'd already taken the first step. And as I walked out of that office, I felt like I had done something incredible. I had taken control of my own life, and the fear that had gripped me earlier began to dissolve. I had no idea what would happen next. But one thing was for sure, I was never going to let anyone treat me like that again. I had made my bold decision, and there was no turning back. I still didn't know if I had made the right choice. Would I find another job? Would I regret this later? All those questions lingered in my mind. But there was one thing I did know for sure. I had just taken the most powerful step I could for my future. The real twist of the story came when I realized that I wasn't just walking away from a toxic environment. I was taking my power back in a way I never expected. After I handed in my resignation, something strange happened. The people I had worked alongside for so long, the ones who had seen firsthand the mistreatment, the unnecessary stress, and the endless hours of unappreciated work, they all started to open up. They were fed up too. And what was even more surprising, they didn't want to stay behind. They didn't want to continue working in a place where they were treated as disposable resources. They wanted out. I didn't even have to do much. Word spread quickly. They saw me take the leap, and suddenly, they were inspired to take their own. It was almost like a ripple effect. As each person came to me, asking what my next move was, I started to realize something important. I wasn't the only one who had been trapped in a system that didn't value its people. There were others, quietly suffering, just waiting for the moment when someone would take a stand. And I had given them that moment. The power move wasn't just about walking away from a job. It was about taking a group of people with me. It was about showing everyone there was another way to work. One where your voice mattered, where your time was respected, where your contributions didn't go unnoticed. The decision to leave wasn't just mine. It was a collective awakening. And once I realized this, I knew I had to act fast. I started having one-on-one conversations with the best and brightest people on the team, those who were undervalued, those who were truly capable of making a difference elsewhere. We weren't just going to quit and walk away. No, we were going to make an impact. We were going to take our skills, our knowledge, and our experience to a place that would appreciate it. We were going to build something bigger than what we had left behind. I could see the excitement in their eyes as we talked. They were ready. They just needed a leader, and I was more than willing to step up and take that role. We didn't just quit. We built a plan. Together we would leave, but we would leave with purpose. Our departure wasn't just an escape, it was a strategic move. We would take the best staff with us, the ones who were the heart and soul of the company, and we would start something new, something better, something that valued each individual as they should be valued. And the first step was creating a new environment, a new place for us to shine, where we could thrive and grow without fear of being overlooked or underappreciated. It didn't take long for others to catch on. More people came to me, expressing interest in joining us. It was almost like a secret club, those who had the talent and drive to make it, and those who were ready to take control of their own futures. I had no intention of taking the entire team, but it became clear that this wasn't just about finding another job. It was about finding a new way of working, a better way. People wanted to be part of that. They didn't just want to escape, they wanted to build something they could be proud of, something that didn't come with a toxic work environment. And with each new person who joined, I felt more and more empowered. But there was more to it than just leaving a bad situation. We had the opportunity to redefine what work meant. We could shape our own destiny. We could create a place where the best staff were treated with the respect they deserved, where hard work was recognized, and where the culture was one of mutual support and growth. We didn't have to settle for what we had been given. We were going to make our own path. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much power we had. By leaving with the best staff, we weren't just walking away from a bad job. We were taking the most valuable assets of that company with us. We were a force to be reckoned with. We were about to show the world that talent couldn't be silenced, that hard work couldn't be ignored. We were about to show everyone that we had the ability to create something better. By the time we had our plan in place, the decision was already made. We weren't just quitting, we were taking control. We were showing everyone that we didn't need to rely on an employer who didn't value us. We were going to build something better, and we were going to do it together. As I walked away from that office, I wasn't just proud of my decision. I was proud of the people who had stood by me, ready to take the next step with me. Together, we were about to prove that the real power didn't lie in a job title or a paycheck. It lay in our hands, our skills, and our ability to make things happen. And in that moment, I knew that this was only the beginning of something big. We had the chance to rewrite the narrative, to prove that the best staff didn't need to stay in a toxic environment to survive. We could thrive on our own, and we would. If you've been inspired by my story, if you've ever found yourself in a situation where you felt trapped or undervalued, then you're not alone. The journey to reclaiming your power starts with one bold move, just like it did for me. Don't settle for less than you deserve. Stand up, take control, and let's build a community of people who refuse to be treated as disposable. If you want to hear more stories like mine and learn how to make that power move in your own life, make sure to subscribe to my channel. Together, we can prove that we don't have to stay in a situation that doesn't value us. We can take our skills, our talents, and our dreams to a place that appreciates them. Don't miss out. Subscribe now and start your journey to empowerment today.